Hi, I'm Ryan McDowell, and you're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Oh, yes, everybody. Welcome back in once again to the only Dynasty show out there that is a certified Inferno. It's the Dynasty Hot Seat. We're back once again with the legend from DLF, Ryan McDowell. Ryan, I hope you're doing a lot better than I'm sounding.
Yeah. Sounds like you've been through it over there, but yeah, we'll get through this just fine. It's going to be fun talking rookies, and maybe that hot seat will help the vocal cords a little bit.
Yeah, I hope so. This is the remnants from my bachelor party I was on last weekend.
Oh,
So
nice.
yeah,
Well, you're paying
it's
the price then.
It's worth it. It's worth it. I knew there was going to be a price to pay, so I'll take it. But it's great having you on the show, Ryan. Ryan, before we dive into this mock draft, any general takes on this class? Any pleasant surprises that you've seen, or any kind of question marks that have been raised?
Yeah, I mean, so many general takes, I would say, top to bottom with this class. I think because the wide receiver group is, I would say certainly below par what we've seen in recent years, or really for the past decade almost. I think a lot of people might look at this class and think of it as a down class, disappointing class, one that they want to trade out of in Dynasty, but I think that just gets balanced out with the strength of the running back position. I think the other thing you're seeing in Dynasty right now, and I know I'm certainly feeling this in my leagues and the way I have been building my teams, is a shorter term view. It used to be pretty common to have Dynasty conversations about what might happen 5 years from now, and those types of talks are just don't really happen anymore. They're basically gone. I think everybody is viewing Dynasty in a much more short-term window. Win now, win all the time is kind of the new idea, which sounds crazy. I mean, maybe that should always be the idea, but
Yeah.
The productive struggle guy has a hard time making that shift. So but I think that mindset of short-term windows pairs perfectly with this strong running back class we have.
Yeah.
So I think this year's rookie drafts and certainly this mock draft that we'll do today are going to look very different than anything we might have expected if we were having conversations 1 or 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely been a shift that I've seen as well. And let's see how these rookie players shake out in this mock draft then, Ryan. Shall we? Let's go. Let's see everyone at home. Make sure you're liking and subscribing. Ryan's gonna show you how it's done here at the 1-1. It is super flex. Ryan, I gotta ask you, would you like any tight end premium on this, or are you okay?
Hey, I'm good either way. We didn't talk about the tight end position in that kind of that overview, but that's another deep one. Certainly a couple of big names at the top, but I really like the depth of the tight end position as well. And just like, in some ways it mirrors the running back position that right now in Dynasty, we need a good tight end crop. And I think we're going to get it with this group. So, whether we're talking tight end premium or not, I think you're going to see a couple of guys pretty early in this mock draft and in most rookie drafts that you take part in.
All right, well, let's maybe leave the premium off just to show how strong this class is. Then even you can take these guys even without that premium. So let's go no premium. It is super flex though. Does that change your 1-1? I know some people still have a quarterback at 1. Some people have a running back at 1. Where are you leading?
Yeah, it doesn't the format doesn't change my opinion here. I'm still going Ashton Jeanty at that top spot. It feels like the quarterback position with one kind of obvious guy specifically is feeling a little more secure, but it's not enough to push me off of Ashton Jeanty at that top spot. I think if you're getting, if you own that 101, you're getting you're getting a difference maker right away. JJ Zacharyson had a great stat in his prospect guide that if you're a top 15 drafted running back, we're talking NFL draft, of course, if you're drafted among the top 15 over the past decade, lock it in for at least 17 fantasy points per season, or I'm sorry, at least 17 fantasy points per game for at least 1 year.
Yeah.
Even JJ made a note that even Trent Richardson gave us at least 1 year of that before things fell apart for him. So, Genty, we'll see where he lands. And I think draft capital is going to tell such a huge story in this draft class, obviously, because I think there's a lot of tight tiers right now. But Ashton Genty is not part of those tight tiers. He's all by himself at the top. And you look at our recent ADP over at DLF, he's already being valued as a top 5 dynasty running back, already being valued, at least in single quarterback leagues, as a first round dynasty pick in startup drafts. He's the 12th overall player in our March ADP single quarterback.
There's been so many things like waxing lyrical about Ashton Genty. I don't often like to be negative, but I feel like someone at some stage has to say, is there anything wrong with this guy? Like, do you have anything that you're like, oh, actually, I'm a little bit worried about him? Because it seems like everyone's like, Ashton Genty's one, and we shouldn't even need to think about it or talk about it. Is there anything that you think, oh, actually, there may be a little concern here or there about Genty, or is he just a super lock for you?
He's a super lock, but if we're really digging deep, certainly had a ton of work in his college career. Didn't really see any, didn't see that hurt him as far as wear and tear or injuries or anything like that. But when you're touching the ball 300 plus times, multiple years in college, that starts to raise some eyebrows. So maybe you're worried about that workload that he brings into the league, but still just 21 years old. So, I think we're really picking nits to try to find something here. I think Genty, you can value him above Breece Hall, above Devon Achane in dynasty leagues. So then when you compare him to some of the other rookies, it kind of becomes a no contest.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm just trying to find something to keep the conversation going. I've been doing these mock drafts since October, Ryan. So I've been talking about Genty a long time, and it's all
I get it.
Yeah,
I do. Yeah, I do think in the super flex format, it's still a discussion. I'm not taking a quarterback there, but I don't think it's crazy to value a quarterback above a running back. In the Superflex Dynasty format. We're still talking about a relative short shelf life for these running backs. And you hope Genty is kind of the the rule breaker there, that he'll give us close to a decade. That would be great of production, as we've seen from guys like McCaffrey and some of the others.
I suppose the nightmare scenario for Genty is the Jets sitting at 7 do decide to go ahead and make an unbelievable running back room with Genty and Breece Hall, as unlikely as it might seem. Would that change anything for you if he ended up in that nightmare scenario?
Oh man, it would be tough to go away from him even in that situation. Obviously it would depend where a couple of these other guys land, but I can't see any scenario right now, a little over a month away from the NFL draft, in which Genty's not the 101.
Yeah, I think you're quite right. Genty locked in there. Who's following him right next to him at 1-2, Ryan?
I'm still not going quarterback here. I'm going with the next running back on my list, which is Omarion Hampton. A big guy, big bodied guy, really impressive speed score. He is a receiving threat, even in that 6 foot, 220 pound frame. So kind of the definition here of that workhorse back that we're going to see on the field every single down. And I mean, really, I think in my rookie rankings and in any kind of mock drafts that I might do, including this one, I'm essentially chasing draft capital here because I still, and this is not foolproof, I wish it was, but I still defer to what the NFL tells us when they make these picks, right? And the closer we get, it seems like Hampton could be a first round NFL draft pick, and Genty is certainly getting all of the attention, and understandably so. But Omarion Hampton, we'd be talking about him as the RB1 in almost any other year outside of this season.
Yeah, definitely. It seems like Genty kind of steals the shine off him a little bit, but
yeah,
I mean, the Dynasty Hotseat community and the people in the comments love Omarion Hampton, Ryan. So you're going to get some positive praise in the comment section. I know that for sure. Because when he slips and he falls, sometimes at the top 5, people get real angry. So I'm sure they're very happy seeing him all the way up at 2 where he belongs.
Well, I mentioned those tight tiers, and I do think for some, Hampton could be part of that, right? I mean, there's 3 other running backs that we're typically throwing out as kind of the big 5 rookie running backs. And earlier in the offseason, I had a couple different guys as my RB2. The closer we've gotten, and certainly as we went through the combine where Hampton was so impressive, he's kind of solidified himself in that spot for me. I think he's, based on everything I read, all the mock drafts and everything that are out there, I think he's also pretty well solidified as the RB2 in the NFL. NFL draft as well. So, but again, there's 3 other guys that could make that case to be the second back off the board.
Is one of those 3 guys coming in at pick number 3 for you? You have running back 1, 2, and 3 in a row?
I don't. I'll finally bend the knee to the format here and go with Cam Ward. Mentioned that quarterback position earlier, obviously, and certainly looks like he's locked in at the 1 spot. We'll see if a trade happens here in these next 4 or 5 weeks, but I think we can assume 101 playing with the Tennessee Titans. And, that's not an offense you get super excited about necessarily. Some improved weapons there, but still a long way to go for that offense under Callahan. So, I mean, with me, I think about, and I think all Dynasty players should think about not just who, I've got the 103, who am I getting, but what can I do with that pick? And if you need a quarterback, I think there are a lot of quarterbacks you could trade that 103 pick for. So if it comes down to, I'll take Cam Ward, or I can trade that pick for Jared Goff, Drake May, maybe you can aim even higher than that. I think that's more of what I would do, but we're not trading here. We're drafting. So I'll go with Ward at the 3 spot. I'm just kind of thinking about where he might slot into that current quarterback landscape. And of course, this time last year, we were looking at Caleb Williams, looking at Jaden Daniels, and those guys were essentially QB1s from the jump, right? As basically being valued as low-end QB1s. And it's not going to be the same for Ward and certainly any other quarterbacks in this class. We're going to be talking about him as a mid-range quarterback too in dynasty rankings and in fantasy. And if that's what you're getting, depending on that team build, you could probably flip that pick for a better option.
Do you think Cam Ward is closer to a Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels as a prospect, or the guy he's going to replace, Will Levis? Where is he closer to?
Oh man, my guy Levis. I hate to dump on him. Gosh, we're talking about a wide range of outcomes there.
Yeah.
Daniels and Caleb versus Levis. I mean, I guess you certainly hope he's closer to Caleb Williams, and that's what I would say now. I don't have the confidence in Ward that I had with Caleb Williams or Daniels or even Drake May. So, and we've heard that all off season, that Ward or Sanders even would be more like quarterback 4 or 5 or 6 if we're combining these classes, or if they were in last year's class. And I mean, that's what I see as well. So I like Ward. I don't love Ward on my dynasty roster necessarily.
Yeah, but you still have to. You're right. You got to take that value. You got to, what do you say, bend the knee to the format at some stages and just take the positional value when it's there. So he's locked in at 3. Who's right after him at pick number 4?
Now, going back to the running back position here, and again, tight windows, tight tiers. This RB3 spot has changed a lot for me, but right now it's Travion Henderson. He's drawing the comps to like Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't quite see that type of playmaking, but certainly a fun prospect. Questions about what he can offer as a ball carrier, but a guy like him, I think he gets the edge over a couple of the other running backs just due to that playmaking upside, the big play upside that he showed off really throughout his entire career. Obviously a receiving threat, a big play threat. We got the early breakout with an impact on the field as a true freshman there in Columbus. So feel pretty good about Henderson as a prospect in this early part of the first round.
Whenever people talk about Henderson, a lot of the time they bring up the fact that he's had 1 or 2 injuries. How much does that play a part into any kind of rookie prospect scouting that you do? Do you look at injuries too much, or you just kind of go, it is what it is?
Yeah, it really becomes player by player situation for me. And I do think that's a concern, watching, I mean, it feels like watching College Game Day over the past 2 or 3 years. They're just constantly giving that Travion Henderson injury update, especially the 23 season. It was a week by week thing if he was going to be out there. And honestly, some of those injuries seemed like more minor things that seemed to linger. So I think that has to be a piece of the overall profile, piece of the puzzle for sure. You don't want that to be the ultimate decision maker, that you're taking a guy, off your board because of that, except in obvious extreme situations. And I don't think Henderson is that situation.
Do you think ultimately waiting that extra year has been good or bad for his dynasty value?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to say it was a negative. Well, I mean, he comes back, he gets Judkins to compete with him. They win a national title, so I'm sure he would personally say that was a great move. And I get that from a dynasty, from a fantasy standpoint, not so much. I mean, we were talking about that poor rookie class of a year ago where, rookie drafts, we saw an injured Jonathan Brooks be kind of the top guy. We saw Trey Benson as the second guy drafted, even though he was locked in behind James Conner there. And obviously we saw some players emerge once the season kicked off and kind of those rankings changed a little bit. But presumably Henderson would have been a strong candidate to be the RB1 in last year's class. And he's 22 years old now, so that doesn't change things a ton. But if we're talking about a 21-year-old Henderson, we're feeling all that much better about him as a prospect. So it's tough to say he was hurt because now he's going to go in that 4 to 8 range, let's say. But yeah, I think he potentially would have had even more dynasty value last season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. But still, being pick 4, nothing to sniff at all. So he's locked in. Who's following him up at pick 5?
Yeah, we'll make it a Buckeye run here with his teammate Quinshon Judkins. Love the power he runs with, the force he runs with, and really thinking about what he's done as in his college career. Comes into Ole Miss where you'll remember that season. We were so excited about Zach Evans. I mean, you talk about a guy who could have been RB1 and had that expectation. We thought Zach Evans was going to be it. And, a lot of dynasty managers, myself included, missed on that one. But Judkins pushed Zach Evans off the field for a couple of years and then did that same thing Not so much. I mean, obviously it was a shared backfield, but to take some work away from Henderson and have the impact that he did for Ohio State, certainly impressive. He's obviously never backing down from competition. So Judkins here, another big-bodied guy. There's some questions about his upside as a receiver. So that ultimately ends up being the tiebreaker with Henderson. But to get Judkins at the 5 spot, this is another guy like Hampton, like obviously Genty, that would be the RB1 in a lot of different rookie classes.
How many dynasty forfeits do you think are going to be for league losers that they're going to have to get the Quinchon Judkins haircut, right, with the half and half?
That's a good one. I don't know. That's he rocks it pretty well, but I don't think most of us fantasy players would look so good in that one.
I certainly wouldn't, Ryan. I'm not pulling that off. I can tell you that much for free. Yeah, I think you have to be a pretty cool guy, and I'm not quite as cool as Quinchon. He's in at 5. Just to show you how strong this running back class is. Look at that. 4 of the top 5 are running backs. Is it going to be 5 of the top 6, or where are you going?
No, going away from the running back position here. There's obviously one big name left there, but I'll wait on him a little bit. I'm going to the tight end position. I'm taking Tyler Warren here at the 6th spot, even without that tight end premium we just considered here. I think if you've got the tight end premium on, you're pushing him up maybe above the Ohio State running backs, maybe to that 4th spot. You just have to love pretty much everything about Warren's game. He did spend 5 years in college, so another guy who's been around, a little bit older due to that, but very good chance to be a top 10, top 12 overall player in the NFL draft. Had that huge breakout in 2023, and then improved on that this past season with really a performance that we all had to take notice of. In 2024, Warren, another guy, we said this with Genty, already being valued as a top 5 player at his position, top 5 dynasty tight end already is Tyler Warren. The drop rate was a little rough a couple years ago. If you want to think about what the negatives are, that could be it. But other than that, we're looking at a really strong prospect in Jaylen Warren.
Do you think last year with Theo Johnson getting so many plays there, is that just the way Penn State operate, you think? And it's the senior guy gets the snaps at tight end, or is that an issue about Tyler Warren we should be worried about?
I don't think so. I mean, we had Theo, of course, blocking him in some way. I mean, Brenton Strange was there as well, I believe.
Yeah,
so, this, I mean, it's kind of turning into tight end U. Maybe their rival, a new rivalry with Iowa there to see who can produce the better NFL tight ends. But no, I mean, I don't worry about that. I mean, Theo Johnson had a solid rookie season himself, maybe in line to be the starter there in New York, and really same for Strange in Jacksonville. We could be talking about 3 NFL starters coming from that 2023 Penn State roster, 22, 23. So yeah, Tyler Warren here in the middle of the 1st, already locking in, like I said, that top 5 dynasty tight end.
Absolutely love it. So we got some running backs, got some quarterbacks. Now we got a tight end. Is pick 7 where we see the first receiver, or we got to wait a bit longer?
No, it's receiver here for me. And again, the tight tiers, I think you can make an argument for probably 3 different guys to be the wide receiver 1 in this class. For me right now, it's still Tet McMillan, who's he's kind of been, I think for most people, he's been that wide receiver 1 for much of the past year, really, when you think about this rookie class, that big-bodied guy, but lines up all over. We saw him in the slot plenty, despite that 6'4" frame. So he's kind of a versatile weapon in that way. Obviously, we love the production. He's an early declare. Size is good, as I said. He's going to get that draft capital. Although, I mean, early in the offseason was looking like maybe a top 5 or 10 pick. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe he's more in the mid first round range, but that just lands him on a better team, right? So maybe that's not such a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. You just want him to. Well, I've said it a few times. It can't get much worse for him than the team he was on in college. So no matter where he ends up,
Very
it's going to
true.
be improvement for Ted McMillan. I do wonder how much do you believe in prospect fatigue, Ryan? I wonder if Ted McMillan's suffering from that a bit.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a thing. We tend to to overanalyze, and all of a sudden these guys that we thought were good for 3 years or 2 or 3 years are suddenly not that good anymore. So I definitely think that could be it. But honestly, a couple of the other options to be that wide receiver one are in the same situation. That those are kind of household names when it comes to dynasty players or college football fans. These guys are pretty well established, and maybe starting to lose their luster a little bit because of that. I do think ultimately kind of tearing out those top 3 or 4 wide receivers it's going to come down to landing spot. And I don't think the first receiver drafted is necessarily a lock to be the wide receiver one in dynasty. It's going to be the tiebreaker of who's got the better quarterback, who's in that better offense, and giving themselves a chance to produce earlier.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And is Ted the start of a wide receiver run for you here, or are we going back to another position?
Yeah, we're going to bounce around a little bit. I'm going to go with that RB5. I think the last guy in this tier is Caleb Johnson, another big-bodied guy. Can catch the ball pretty well. Also, don't typically say that for those Iowa running backs, but showed big-time improvement in his final college season. I mean, I think the concern here has to be is he a one-hit wonder, right? I mean, we really just saw the impressive production from him in this final college season in 24. So that's kind of the question that's lingering. I think the speed is good. I've heard some speed questions about him, but again, for his size, 6'1", 224, I think the 40 time, the speed that we've seen on film as well have been good. Yeah, have been good enough.
Yeah, the 40 times, like, I'd be more concerned if he looked slow on film than if he had a slower 40, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
the 40 doesn't really mean, if anything, I believe, I can't remember who did a study of this, but there's almost a negative correlation between fast 40 time and how good you are as an NFL player. So it doesn't really concern me too much. What do you say to people who are like, he's off my board because he ran a slow 40?
Well, I mean, I think that's why we look at speed score, right? I think speed score is so much more important than 40 because it's factoring in the player size. So we can always say, yeah, pretty good for a big guy, but that speed score that is generated as a combination essentially of their 40 time and the player's height and weight will really tell us what we need to know. And Johnson still had a speed score of over 100, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's the end of those big 5 sort of running back prospects. Who's going at pick 9 right after the big 5 there?
Yeah, now we'll get back to those receivers now. Luther Burden at the 9 spot. And this is another, maybe this is prospect fatigue with Burden as well. Really impressive. I guess it was sophomore season for him a couple years ago. Massive season for Missouri. But then we saw him take a big step back. We saw the entire Missouri offense take a big step back in 2024. And I think that's what has some people concerned is, which one is the real Luther Burden? We saw lots of manufactured touches. We saw the low A dot. But despite that, the yards after catch were so impressive with Burden. The ability to, whether it was using his speed or simply breaking tackles, the ability to get away from those defenders. I just think he's going to be locked in to the slot. So again, maybe that comes with upside questions, but we're talking about the 9th pick here, and the 9th pick in what some would call a bad class. I really like the idea of getting a guy like Burden.
I've got a hell of a question for you here, Ryan. You ready?
Uh-oh.
Luther Burden released his own brand of potato chips in Missouri that sold out almost instantly. So, if you were to
Nice.
apply one flavor of potato chip to Luther Burden as a player, what would it be?
Oh man, he's got that's a fun question. Yeah, that was not on the show sheet, bud.
No, sorry. Yes.
I would say barbecue comes to mind because you get a little bit of spice with that big play threat, but also can just serve as kind of the everyday chip. You're lock it in with a sandwich, bag of barbecue chips. It can be that everyday reliable chip, but every once in a while you'll get a little spice too.
Do you know the flavor that he released, Ryan?
I have no idea.
It was Luther Burden's barbecue chips. Can you believe that?
Okay. All right.
Absolutely nailed it. Absolutely crushed it. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Sorry, a bit of a left field question there. I thought it'd be quite fun though. He's locked in.
That's a fun
We got
one. That's a
we
fun
got
one.
three more. We got 3 more picks left in round 1. I promise no more snack related questions with these guys. Who's going to 10?
Yeah, we're gonna go with another receiver here. And this one's a little tricky. I kind of have gone back and forth here, but I'm going Matthew Golden. We talked about the prospect, burnout maybe, and just over analyzing. He's the opposite of that. You're right. He's kind of the newcomer. I mean, even if you talk about, I think I looked at his mock draft database ADP from early January, and we're outside of the top 150, I believe was the number. And now he's a potential first round NFL draft pick. So I think it's always understandable to be a little wary of guys like that. Like, what has he done since January to boost him up? And it's really, it's really draft analyst and maybe front offices as well, taking another look at him and liking the traits. So that's a little dangerous. Never had 1,000 yards, played a couple years for Houston. And then this final season at Texas. And I mean, I think Texas really wanted Isaiah Bond to be the guy. Yeah. And they tried that early in the season, didn't really work. Back half of the season, they start relying on Matthew Golden along with the tight end helm there, and saw some big time success with that. So Golden, I'm a little scared of, honestly, at this 10th pick, but again, draft capital is going to tell the story. And certainly if he's a first round NFL draft pick, I think you won't see him fall much further than this, if any at all.
Do you think there's any chance? Because we see this sometimes in the NFL draft where we see players going like, whoa, okay, really? Do you think there's any chance he's the first receiver off the board?
Absolutely. I think any of these 3, along with the next guy we'll talk about here, could be the first receiver off the board. I wouldn't be surprised if any of them were, because they're also different. They offer different things. It kind of comes down to what an NFL team needs, what they value. But absolutely, I would not be surprised. I mean, we've seen Golden mocked to the Cowboys at 12. Pretty, I've seen that more than one time by different folks I trust and read. So, yeah, that would not be a surprise.
And you teased who was following. Is this another receiver then following at 11?
Yeah, going Ibuka here, Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State. I guess this is our third Buckeye among the top 11. No wonder they brought home the title this year.
Yeah.
Ibuka it feels like he's been at Ohio State forever, right? Of course, another guy along with Henderson, along with I thought there was one more in this class. Maybe somebody will take soon, who had a chance to be in last year's class, right? Like in January of last year, we thought Ibuka was going to be a 2024 NFL draft guy, and he decided to go back to school. Good call by him and Henderson. They win the title. I think Ibuka probably just like Henderson, is getting drafted about where he would have if he had come out last year. Has a chance to be I would say late first rounder, early second rounder, probably right about where he would have gone last year. And now he's got that national title to flaunt. So good call by him. Another guy we're going to see in the slot for sure. We really saw his role kind of change over the past couple of years at Ohio State. It was his, I guess it was sophomore year, 2 years ago. That was really his most impressive statistically for the Buckeyes. We see the, we saw the A dot drop and the slot percentage rise for Ibuka in 2024. And I think we'll mostly see him in the slot in the NFL as well.
I mean, knowing Ibuka's luck when it comes to wide receiver rooms, he's probably going to end up on the Bengals somehow, right?
Yeah, it's been a crowded room. You can't argue with the competition he's faced in practice, and I mean that's why I do think you have to be careful. You see a lot of those, a lot of the metrics are based on percentage of team yardage, and those can all be very valuable. But I don't think you can whitewash this, an entire position with these same metrics, because it does matter if you're battling, this loaded wide receiver room that we've seen in Ohio State for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. It matters, and it is going to impact your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's managed to carve out a role every single year, which shows you how good a player he is. And that's why he's earned that 11th spot. And there's only one spot left of round number 1. Ryan, who's that going to?
Yeah, tough call here. Some really strong options. It's making me already kind of doubt the idea that this is a weak class, even with some subpar wide receivers. I'm going to go with the next tight end, Colston Loveland here. Certainly almost a lock to be a first round NFL draft pick, I think. Battling an injury, I guess, that he dealt with late in the season. So we didn't really see anything at the combine. Probably not going to see anything until training camp, but I think we've seen enough from him that he'll get pushed into that first round. Another big guy, I mean, kind of like Warren, 6'6", 248. You would think with that size that he not only would be a strong pass catcher as he is, but also an impressive blocker. And that's not really the case. Pretty poor grades from PFF on blocking. And honestly, I think that's enough to have a few concerns with Loveland as far as just getting himself consistently on the field. And you don't have to be a great blocker when it comes to that tight end position, but I think you have to be, you can't be bad. And he's been pretty bad based on PFF's grades. So that's a little bit of a concern. But again, we're talking first round NFL draft player, a guy who's already a dynasty tight end 1 among those top 10 or 12 tight ends. So Loveland's a pretty good value here at the last spot in the first.
He's going to go to the Chargers at 22, right? That's like one of the most obvious things you can see, right?
I mean, I think so. The Chargers have they did bring in Conklin the other day. I believe they signed Conklin, and I mean, to this day still, when I think Blake Corum, I think Chargers, and I have to take a step back and tell myself, wait, he's not a Charger, he's a Ram, because from January or whenever he was hired with the Chargers, everybody said, oh yeah, day 2, Chargers are taking Blake Corum. They've got a need at running back, lock it in, the obvious Michigan connection. And it did make sense. And the Rams beat them to it. So I think we can connect the dots there pretty easily, but it just doesn't always go that way. So we'll see. I might be sitting here a year from now saying Loveland's a Charger when he's really, a Bronco or something else.
Yeah, hey, Bronco Babe. Oh, they just got Ingram, right? But there's a lot of places for Lovin to slot in, right? Ryan, for round number two, we'll pick up the pace a little bit here. So instead of going
Sounds
one
good.
by one by one, why don't you give me your 2-1, 2-2, and 2-3, and then you can choose one of those guys to talk about in detail.
Yeah, we're going to get a little bit of a quarterback run, and it's like I almost forgot that it was super flex, but that's not the case. It's just this quarterback class is not that great, as we all know at this point. I'm going Shedeur Sanders at 201. I will follow that up with another quarterback, Jackson Dart, at 202. And we'll go with another interesting player, Sanders' teammate, former teammate at 203, Travis Hunter. Man, it's tough to choose one of these guys to talk about because they all are very interesting in different ways. I'm really close to flip-flopping the QB2 and QB3. And if you could guarantee me right now that Jackson Dart gets first round draft capital, I would go ahead and do that now. And it just comes down to the upside that we see with Dart and the lack of upside, honestly, that I see with Shedeur Sanders. The accuracy is great for Sanders, but that's kind of the calling card, and everything else. I think if you're doing kind of a head-to-head comparison, I think he loses pretty much everything else to Jackson Dart, who has the huge arm and the confidence to go with it. He's going to sling the ball down the field, and when he's not doing that, he's breaking out of the pocket to run the ball. He's one of the best running quarterbacks in this class, certainly the best among these first three guys that we've talked about. So, yeah, I'm hedging here a little bit, but like I said, very close to flip-flopping those two quarterbacks.
How much of a boost do you think Shedeur Sanders has got just because of who his dad is? Do you think if his dad wasn't coaching there, would he still be talked about as one of these top talents? Probably, I think is the answer, but I think there's still something there that helps him and boosts him a little bit.
Yeah, probably is the answer. But I mean, we're still talking about a guy who is a 3-star quarterback who started at a small HBCU at Jackson State. And yeah, I mean, he's riding co-pilot with his dad. But I mean, we're not taking anything away from what he did as a college player either. At least I'm not. I think he was very impressive to go from that level he entered college to where he is now, a possible and even likely first round NFL draft pick. When it comes to fantasy, if you're not going to run, I mean, we know this about the quarterback position. If you're not going to give us something with your legs, you've got to throw 50 touchdowns and air it out. You got to be that Joe Burrow, and he's not Joe Burrow. So yeah, he's going to be a low end QB2, maybe a mid range QB2, and I just see more upside with Dart. And I think after the show, I might go ahead and switch those two.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I like to hear. Dart for me definitely has the most upside for sure. It's definitely a conversation worth having. So those are the three players locked in. Who's the next group of three at 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah, I see a little bit of a wide receiver run here. And when I talk about those tight tiers, this is really the position and the spot that I think about because it's tough for me to differentiate between Trey Harris, that's who I've got at the 204. A couple of Iowa State guys, Jalen Noel at 205, Jaden Higgins at 206. They're all really close for me. I feel like I've flip-flopped them every time I look at my rankings and adjust my rankings. I do think Harris has the draft capital advantage that I think he's the one most likely to be the higher draft pick. So that's what pushes him to the top of this trio. And honestly, even the next guy we'll talk about after this would be in the same category. Higgins and Harris, I really like both of these guys, and they've become almost almost a dinosaur in the NFL because they're those big, tall, big-bodied guys. That used to be all we cared about, right? That's all we wanted. And if you were, certainly if you were under 6 feet, but if you were under 6 feet or under 200 pounds, we didn't want you in fantasy. And the game has changed. The position has changed. And those 6'3", 6'4", 215-pound guys have become the rarity, not the norm. So I'm excited to see Harris and Higgins as those big guys, how they can find their role in the NFL.
With Higgins, I've seen him in the last few weeks being really cemented as like a firm second round pick for Dynasty. What do you think's happened in the last few weeks where people have really started to open their eyes? I think it's just people have had a chance to watch the film on him, and they're just loving what they see.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And again, if you're a casual college fan, if you're a casual Dynasty player or whatever, you probably didn't know who Jaden Higgins was 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. And same with Noel. And honestly, maybe even the same with Harris, even though he played in the SEC for his final stretch of college. But it's been McMillan and Burden and Ibuka who we've heard about, and that was kind of the end of the list for the most part. And that's what led to that narrative that it's a weak wide receiver class. And I get that, and I agree with that. But there's some really fun depth, and we're going to get second. I think we're going to get second day capital for Harris and Noel and Higgins, and maybe a couple of these other guys that will come off the board here in these last few picks.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's going to be a fun day. 2 is going to be really fun. Actually, I can't wait to see where all these players. And there's going to be a lot of running backs coming off the board as well.
Impact.
Yeah, it's going to be real good to watch. So that's a really nice group of 3 with Harrison, Noel, and Higgins locked in. 7, 8, and 9 is your next bunch. Where are you going?
Yeah, more wide receivers here, starting with Jalen Royals, Utah State kid, a player I feel like I'm probably higher on than most, can do a little bit of everything. He's getting some, I saw some Deebo Samuel comps with him, which I don't know if I believe that one. I don't know if I'm going that far. He's not quite as big or doesn't play as strong as Deebo, but certainly a versatile player. Had that late breakout, but he's a speed guy, ran a 4.42 40, track athlete in high school, and already talked about the versatility that he offers. So really like Royals. He's, where I'm confident with Harris, Noel, Higgins, when it comes to that day 2 draft capital. If you tell me Royal slips to the 4th, I wouldn't be shocked. But if he does, that's probably going to impact where he goes. Of course, in Dynasty rookie drafts, he might lose this spot a little bit if that were the case. Cam Scottaboo next up at the 2 point. Where are we at? 2.0?
2.8.
Yeah, 2.08. Cam Scottaboo and Alec Iamaner to finish off this group of 3.
Do you know what Cam Scottaboo does before every game, Ryan? Because I feel like this should be an automatic flag. He eats a raw onion. Eats a raw onion before every game. That's not cool, right?
Not cool. A little bit of a flag, but also not surprising. When if you've seen this guy play, he kind of plays like he just ate a raw onion. I mean, runs like his hair is on fire, but at the same time doesn't have the speed that you might associate with that. Yeah. Obviously, tackle breaking is going to be his calling card, and if he can carry that over to the NFL against those elite defenders every single Sunday, then he's gonna be successful. He's a fun player. I mean, definitely one that I think has a wide range of outcomes based on what we see on NFL draft weekend. He's a guy who could leap into the middle of the first round or could fall to the 3rd round for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's one I'm going to really keep an eye on because I'm either going to be out on the value or I'm going to be like, oh, I can get Cam Scottaboo here. I'll take a sprinkle into that. Yeah, he's one I've definitely got my eye on. And we got one more group of 3 to go, Ryan, with picks 210, 211, and 212. Who are you going with these 3?
Yeah, a couple running backs here. We'll go Dylan Sampson at 210, Ollie Gordon at 211, and we'll finish off again, keeping that format in mind with the 4th quarterback, Jalen Milroe. And Milroe, I think, is the most interesting of these three. Another guy
Yeah.
who could really boost his value. I assume he's going to be a day 2 pick, but he could fall further than that. Honestly, I mean, has some concerns as a passer. We saw some really blow up games from him, and not the good kind of blow up. Where he basically lost the game for Alabama
Yeah.
a couple different times. He's that dual threat. He's typically the guy we want in fantasy, and he's got he's an aggressive passer as well with a pretty strong arm. So he's got a lot of things we like when it comes to playing fantasy football, but he's got to get on the field first, and we'll see if he can overcome those concerns that he has, especially when it comes to accuracy and just passing in general.
I still think he should have went back to play another year. I don't know if you agree,
Yeah,
Ryan.
I do too. Totally agree. I actually thought he would go transfer portal instead of to the NFL. So I hope he gets that day 2 draft capital. I think he could gain some value. We could definitely be talking about him more as a mid-second rounder, a guy you want to take a shot on. But Tyler Shuck, the old guy from Louisville, he's 25 years old, I believe, already. Yeah. I think we could see these two flip-flopping, right? Shuck's the old kind of reliable guy. If he goes before Milroe in the NFL draft, we're going to see the same thing in dynasty rookie drafts, despite the age and kind of the perceived lack of upside from a guy like Shuck.
The thing about Milroe is just picking this game in particular, he went 374 yards in the air with an 81.8% completion rate, and plus he threw 2 touchdowns, and then he also had over 100 yards on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns. That was against Georgia. That was against Georgia as well. You're like, so it's there. It's just, what Jalen Milroe are you going to get? And it's just, man, I don't know. I think some people are going to roll the dice. He might be the. Remember earlier we were speaking about the, oh my God, what's going on moment. I mean, wouldn't it be the most Cleveland Brown things ever to take him at 2?
That would be wild for sure. That would be wild. Seeing him go in the early second round would be fun as well. And again, I just kind of want to see him land in a good spot, see if he can be developed into a valuable NFL player.
Yeah, I think there's definitely talent there. I can't wait to see what happens with him. And Ryan, before we let you go, any kind of, everyone's favorite topic is those sleeper players who are your round 3, your round 4 players. Any guys who are you know what, I never got a chance to talk about them.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. Mostly it seems like wide receivers. But I did talk about the depth of the tight end position earlier, and then only took 2 of those here in this groups. But Mason Taylor, Arroyo, those are going to be day 2 picks for sure that give us some upside at the position. So and definitely if we had that tight end premium on, you're pushing some of those day 2 receivers down, and Sampson and Gordon as well, and getting those getting Arroyo and Taylor, maybe even Ferguson, Helm, getting them into that group.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options at tight end, and I'd like to see some more love for Gunnar Helm. Actually, I think he had a really solid season at Texas. Don't think he's getting enough. He's a big guy. He's a good blocker.
Yeah,
I think he'll see the field quite early, so I think he could be one to watch as a sleeper at tight end. So glad you brought him up. And Ryan, you've absolutely smashed it as predicted at the start of the show. Just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Dynasty Hotseat once again. Can you just remind everyone where can they find all of your amazing work online?
Sure. Find all my work at dynastyleaguefootball.com. Write a ton of articles over there. Do the DLF Dynasty podcast as well. And then find me on Twitter at RyanMC23.
Absolutely brilliant. And thank you once again, Ryan. And of course, thanks to everyone at home who's watched it. If you made it all this way without hitting the like and subscribe button, come on, let's do that before we head on out of here. Thanks again, Ryan. Thanks everyone at home. Remember, for anything Dynasty you want to know, keep it locked on the Certified Inferno. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.